Hi, Paul. Great to be with you today. Lovely to be talking to you. And I thought we would just jump straight in with thinking about your role at Heart Academies Trust, because your role, isn't it? It's Chief Finance and Sustainability Officer. So I was interested to hear a bit about how those two things have come together and when the sustainability had come into it.
Absolutely. So I've been, I was Chief Finance Officer at Heart Academies Trust for a few years, ever since I came into education and the trust was started. Really, the sustainability part of it came in probably halfway through the COVID outbreak, really. And we sat back and said, what's the real purpose of a trust? What's the purpose of us being together? Because we saw through COVID how we had to work quite differently and really bring all the schools together to support each other, but really importantly, support the families and the communities around us. And I think it sort of harked back to the sort of CST view around trusts about their civic responsibility and their civic duty to be more than just schools, but really be, a real part of the community. And we revisited the values of the trust, what we stand for and what were our ambitions. And one of them was around environment and our role in taking action to improve the planet, improve the environment for the children and young people that are coming through our school. I have a background in biology. So I did a degree in biology and I worked for probably the majority of my career actually in charities, some of which were working with vulnerable families and communities in the UK, but also across the world. And I think through my experience saw the impact climate change is having on a lot of those communities. So I suppose from my background and my passion in that particular field anyway, I think I kind of got my sharp elbows out and said, that's my role. And that's what I want to really, take responsibility for, driving through the trust, but also thinking about our role regionally and nationally as well. And actually having a much bigger influence was our ambition on the wider sector, knowing that lots of schools and trusts haven't started this journey yet, or, are just starting and need a lot of help and support.
It's amazing. So, can you give us a few examples of how that sustainability thread, some of the things you've done in the trust, and how that's impacted, maybe in ways you expected and maybe in ways you didn't?
Well, I think if I go back to how we started, so we started the conversation with our trustees and governors about why we felt this is important and got lots of buy-in and support from them, which is fantastic. I'm very lucky that I work with a great board of trustees and a great group of governors. We then started conversations with all our staff, bringing them together, talking about why, and really engaging them in what their role and how they could be involved and what their contribution could be. That led then to lots of conversations with lots of different departments, because I think very early on we said, this isn't about one thing. This is about everything. This is about decarbonising our estates. This is about changing how we use our outdoor spaces to improve biodiversity, to improve perhaps outdoor learning, to improve engagement with nature. This is about adapting our buildings, because we know climate change is happening. Are our buildings going to be safe and secure for, 10, 20, 30 years ahead, where we know by 2050, 80, 90% of the school estate is going to be the school estate we've got right now. So we need to look after it and make sure it's resilient. There's that, elements of what do we do about the curriculum? How do we green our curriculum when actually there's not huge amounts of research and evidence to show how you do that is very important. We know the sort of why we need to do it, but the how we do that and how we support teachers doing that is a really difficult, challenging area. And then thinking about careers. So how do we support green careers? So all of the lot of strands. We said very early on, this can't be one person. It has to be everybody. And that means talking to everybody. It means talking to catering teams and thinking about the food we serve and thinking about their role in reducing gas usage and reducing electricity usage, particularly reducing food waste. They're so important in terms of sustainability and climate action that it was a really important conversation to have with our head of catering, but also all the catering team, so they know their part of it. We talked to our finance team and thought about, well, what's our procurement policy? What are we buying? We know half of our carbon footprint, at very least, comes from the stuff we buy. So are we buying sustainably? Are we buying responsibly? Who are we buying from? Are they responsible organisations? Do we actually need it? Can we reduce what we're buying? Can we repair things? All those really important conversations. We talked to HR and thought about our people strategy. So that links into well-being and the health of our staff. So again, links into that outdoor space and are they able to participate? Thinking about objective setting and performance management, is climate change woven into that? Well, not at the moment, but that's something where we have worked towards over the last few years. Talking to our, obviously talking to our teachers and having the sustainability leads in the schools who are working with, classrooms and groups of children, making sure they're equipped and confident to be able to talk to those children in a way that doesn't frighten them, doesn't cause lots of anxiety, but empowers them to take action. And their role in talking to the children and hearing the student voice in a lot of this and a lot of our planning. So and obviously the facilities, the building. So we've done some big stuff. We've put solar panels everywhere. We've, LED lights all the way through. Our building management system, with, a big capital investment in building management systems to make sure they're fit for purpose and actually reducing demand on our heating and electricity. So we've done I suppose the big capital stuff, which is quite easy. We've looked at the outdoor space and brought in specialists to say, well, actually, if you do how to do planting in areas that we can then manage going forward. I think some of the things we've done, we haven't done so well. We planted trees in the wrong place and they didn't survive. And I suppose it's been a learning process over the years to go, actually, no, you do need everybody involved and you need specialist support in certain areas to make sure you don't trip yourself up. So yeah, it's a journey. And I know that sounds a little bit cliched, but it is, and we're part way through it, and we're certainly not all the way through it, and we're learning all the time, and we're trying to listen to other trusts and other schools and other specialists to try and bring on board what they're doing. So yeah, it's fascinating, it's interesting, it's frustrating, but we're getting there, we're making progress.
Amazing. Thank you, Paul. And would you say, has it, I guess, first off, I suppose it sounds like sustainability and environment, as you say, it's very much written into your vision and mission for the trust, which I guess helps. Because part of me is wondering, might it be challenging for some trusts if they want to make those kind of capital investments, getting trustees and others on board with investing that money? Well, we know
Yes.
we're in a cash-strapped environment, aren't
Mm.
we?
Yeah, the short answer to that is yes, it can be difficult. I mean, there are certainly becoming more and more established business cases to support investment in renewable energy, in building management systems, in LED, because you can see the payback. And there are more and more different ways of doing that make it affordable for schools and trusts. However, there is a funding gap in schools and trusts. There is simply not enough money coming into the system to make sure all our buildings can be net zero, can be fully decarbonised, can be resilient to climate change. And it's a huge gap. I think it's well recognised. Government are doing, and the noise from government and Treasury has been positive recently. Whether that's going to continue and be substantial enough, time will tell. In the meantime, though, and I think this is the really important bit, in the meantime, there are lots and lots of little steps we can all take. And I think that's the important message, that just because we haven't got £500,000 or £1 million to put in lots of air source heat pumps doesn't mean we can't think about our suppliers and who we're buying from, or the energy we've got, are we using it effectively? The waste we create, whether it's energy or food or resources, can we reduce all that down? I think there's lots and lots of quick wins that can reduce your carbon footprint and reduce the damage the schools do to the environment before all the big capital money comes in. Because ultimately there'll need to be more money put into the system, but we can't sit around and wait for that. We have to act now and do as much as we can now.
Right, yes. And I guess, and some of also these sustainability savings, like you talked about catering and reducing food waste. I mean, and that's a double win, isn't it? Because you're yes, saving more food going into waste and creating gases, etc. And you're also then saving money, aren't you? And I suppose
What,
that's where things really work.
what we do is look for the co-benefits, and actually food waste was a triple win. So
Mm.
we reduced waste, so less food going to landfill. We reduce cost, so we're just buying less food because it's not getting chucked out. We also partnered with a charity called Olio. So the food that's left over at the end of lunchtime, that's actually still perfectly edible. We just don't have a use for it. We package it up. They come along, grab it, they'll take it away and distribute it to our community. And our schools are in areas of quite high deprivation. There are families that need that food. So why would we not give it away? So we are, I suppose, in trying to address one thing, we're addressing three or four things. And we find that quite often with climate action that you start thinking about one thing and then you start thinking, well, actually, that has a knock on effect. So uniform's a good example. If you're thinking about the sustainability of uniform, can we reduce the carbon footprint of uniform? Well, if we're doing that, actually what we're probably doing at the same time is reducing the cost of the uniform, making it more accessible to our families. And then we start thinking about, well, actually, if we're making a cost saving on uniform, what we've done is set that money aside and we're using that money as a hardship fund to pay for the uniform for new starters when they come into school. So we're reducing any sort of stigma or financial pressure on those families. So it's just about unpicking everything we do, saying, "Okay, how can we squeeze it to make it better for everybody, better for people, better for planet?" And usually we find a way.
That's amazing, isn't it? Thanks. Oh, several things to come back to there. But firstly, practical point on the uniforms. In order to reduce carbon footprint of uniforms, what kind of things did you look at or making
Part of
that
it's
more
it's part of it's thinking about the supplier you're working
right?
with and looking at their sustainability credentials. So what are they doing to reduce the carbon footprint of the clothes they're making and the water and the energy that goes into making those clothes? Where are they made? Who's making them? Where, are they being shipped in? All those sorts of things. Part of it is thinking about, well, actually, the Department for Education puts out guidance on trying to reduce the number of very tailored, very bespoke uniform items that are costly, but also generally have a higher carbon footprint because of the extra manufacturing that needs to go into them. So can we reduce that down? So I think it's those steps you can take. Part of it is really understanding though, what's the supply chain of that uniform and what at each step in that supply chain is adding the carbon to it and then almost reverse engineering it, going, well, actually, what can we take out then that still meets the needs of the school to have a good uniform, a good, strong uniform, and actually a uniform that's not going to wear out within a year. It's actually hopefully going to last 2, 3, 4 years. And actually, it's in a good enough condition that the other part of it is what happens to it when when it's finished with, is it being passed on to other people? Is there a way of recycling it back in the system that means other children and other families can benefit from it? And I think a lot of schools are very good at, they'll either have their own internal share scheme, those sorts of things, or there's local social media groups or local school groups. So I think schools are getting better and better at that. And the stigma around that is, when I was a kid, I suppose the idea of having secondhand uniform would have been, there's probably quite a big stigma attached to it. I think nowadays that's less and less. So I know my children all have secondhand uniform from friends and family in the area. So, and it's not a problem. So it's thinking about each step in that uniform, the life of that uniform, and thinking, what can we do about it? How can we make it
Yeah,
better?
amazing. Thinking about whole life cycle. And the other thing I wanted to come back to, because we talked about this before as well, is this notion of co-benefits. So can you tell us a little bit more about how that's become part of that almost decision-making philosophy
Yeah.
in your trust as well?
I think it's probably useful to illustrate it with an example. And if
Mm,
I take, say, investing in biodiversity outside. So we've got fields like every school has. And I think everyone sort of quotes that if you added all those fields across the country, it's twice the size of Birmingham. How true that is or not, I don't know, but it gives you an idea of the kind of space we're talking about. If we can invest in those fields to improve biodiversity, where rewilding, adding trees, adding hedging, all the steps you can take, well, the benefits are huge. You've got actually, it's just better for the planet. So ticking the box for that. You are, in terms of adaptation and resilience of your school estate, trees, hedging generally cool your estate. So if you're in an area, say a large urban area, which is going to suffer from heating, and we've got more extreme weather with hotter temperatures, actually, if you're cooling your environment, it's a better place for children and staff and employees to be. If you've got potential drainage problems in the area, so you're at flood risk. Actually putting more trees and hedging in there reduces that flood risk, and there's very sensible steps that can be taken. Again, needs advice and support and guidance, but there's lots of steps that can be taken. So that's on the adaptation and resilience and the biodiversity. If you're then thinking about how do we look after people? Well, actually, one of the best ways in terms of well-being that's recognised is improving that connectedness to nature. So we're bringing nature back into the sort of school estate. We're creating areas where staff can relax and catch their breath a little bit, and where students have a peaceful, calm environment that helps with the wellbeing initiative. If we're then thinking about catering, well, actually part of that food, that biodiversity we're adding, there's absolutely no problem at all making it edible. So if you're thinking about adding edible food into the environment that the children then collect and bring in and eat, and the catering team can use, happy days, that's fantastic. If you're then thinking about, well, if we can create environments that complement what's being taught, say in a biology lesson or a science lesson or a geography lesson, so the teachers can take the children outside and actually engage with what they're being taught in the classroom, then you're enhancing the teaching and learning. So many different things in just doing one thing, but you've got to do that one thing really well. And it's then thinking about, are we engaging the children? Are we engaging the teachers? Are we engaging the support staff? Are we engaging specialists who can teach us how to look after it? There's no point in doing it if it's just going to die over summer, because it's a very expensive investment. So it's about engaging all the right people in that decision making that then can contribute to a fantastic outcome for lots of people. So that's how it's really unpicking it and then adding all those benefits up.
Excellent. Yeah. So rather than just that, um, can we afford it kind of mentality, isn't it? It's
Oh, that's
thinking
the last
actually,
question. Yeah,
yeah,
that's very much on my list
right.
now. And it's odd to say as chief finance
Yeah.
officer, but yeah, can we afford it? Yeah, that's right at the bottom of the list. Let's do everything else first and think about those benefits, and then thinking about the cost. And actually, in terms of the cost, when something like rewilding, there is, the Woodland Trust give away trees. Our local councils give away lots of trees and planting. Local shops and all those sorts of things quite often are giving this stuff away or supporting their local schools and communities. The Education Nature Park gives lots of grants to support adding biodiversity. So the Education Nature Park is a great resource for schools to have a look at that can support all this work, and it's free. So again, you don't need to go very far to find free help and advice to do a lot of this work. Learning Through Landscapes is another organisation that schools can really engage with, and they bring that expertise in terms of thinking about how do you use your outdoor space more effectively to support children, to support teaching and learning. So it's just knowing they're there and knowing to be able to tap into them.
Right. Yes. Brilliant. And I think too, I wanted to just come back to that idea and that we've talked about of it's not just about, are we doing this for the planet and this is for someone else, isn't it? I guess it's a philosophy where you're thinking about people, planet, it's working together and all of that
But
important.
yeah, I mean, it goes back to, I think I'm right in saying it was Harvard Business School that in 1970s, 80s put out the proposal that actually for a sustainable organization, you need to be thinking about profit. So that's your first P. That's fine to get that. You need to be thinking about people, because your business won't work unless you've got good, healthy people. And you need to be thinking about planet and the environment, because actually that supports healthy people and healthy profits. And if you've got those three Ps working together in harmony, that's what a sustainable organization looks like. And I think that's reflected in a lot of the really successful organizations that over time really invest in their people, invest in the environment and the planet. It generates, for private sector, it helps support profits. For us, it helps support for financial efficiency is probably a better phrase. It doesn't start with a P though, but it
Yeah.
helps us in terms of managing our budget. So having those three Ps as a business model, I think really works. And I think there's a lot of evidence to support it.
Makes sense. You could go pounds, people, planet, couldn't you? That might work.
Yeah, go pounds. There you
People,
go.
planet. But,
Yes.
but I think, yeah, I think that's a really great way of taking on that philosophy is really helpful, isn't it? That yes, it's about everything combined, not putting things in separate boxes. And yeah, you've mentioned a lot of resources and things there. I guess it'd be great to say for people who are listening or reading and want to know, be more in touch with some of this stuff. the UK Sustainability Network Operations Group is a great resource.
We've got UKSSN, which is UK School Sustainability Network, the Ops Group, which was set up quite a few years ago, and I'm very fortunate enough to co-chair with other colleagues in the sector, and we're there really to offer free advice, support, guidance, a place to collaborate and share. So we have we have a website, we have lots of online meetings and network meetings, and I'm really trying to engage lots of other stakeholder groups in the education sector to support sustainability. And we're obviously free, which is great. In saying that, I think there are, and it's certainly not a competition, there are lots of other resources in the sector that have emerged over the last couple of years that, again, are either low cost or free. The obvious ones that spring to mind are Let's Go Zero, who have regional climate advisors that schools can tap into and use. And our regional climate advisor is just amazing. So fantastic to have those types of resources all around the country. Climate Ambassadors, which is a new initiative, which is growing and is really trying to engage other sectors to offer support and advice to schools for free. So you can register and become a climate advisor, a climate ambassador, and then go into schools and support schools. There is a sustainability hub now that the Department for Education have invested in, website that's free for schools to use. There's Count Your Carbon, which is a free eco schools resource that schools can use to actually measure their carbon footprint. There's lots of free resources out there. I think the first point is probably to start with one of those organizations, and then they will help signpost you into all those other organizations. So as you get to a point in your climate action plan, they'll be able to help and advise. And when it comes to I think the hardest area, which is climate education and actually teaching the children, there is support out there in terms of greening the curriculum, students organising sustainability as one. We work through the CAPE Alliance, so Climate Adapted Pathways for Education, who do a lot of work really thinking about and researching how to deliver an effective climate curriculum. So it's not about teaching climate per se, although it's important to understand it, but it's about the how. How do you actually do that in a classroom to make sure that you get the right outcomes for children? So you don't create anxiety, but you do create behaviour change that means those children then go out into the community and live and breathe the behaviours you want them into the next generation. So they do a huge amount of fantastic, really important work. So I've mentioned one or two. There's many, many more that I probably could list off that are doing fantastic work as well.
Brilliant, isn't it? It's great. And it's amazing you say it seems like a good idea. Start with some of the free resources out there and gather that intelligence to then understand when you want to bring in those specialists to complement. Oh, there's lots more we could talk about, but maybe we'll save that for another day. But just as the last question, Paul, I wondered if there's anything you could think of. I've been asking everyone, any good reads for people who are interested in this area, or just something you've been reading or listening to recently that you've found has
Well,
helped you on your journey?
so in terms of, I suppose, the bigger what's going out in the world, I am a big fan of Outrage and Optimism, which is a sort of a podcast online, which I think is great because actually it gives you a nice balance between here's the bad stuff that we can all get angry about because things aren't changing as fast as we want, but actually it's really important to mix in with that, the really good stuff. So there's lots of positive stories about real positive change that's happening in the world. I'm a big fan of podcasts, and it doesn't take a lot to go and hunt down a couple of podcasts. Another one that I really like is Thoughtbox Education. They do I believe it's a weekly podcast, I think it is, where they're unpicking, I think, some of the big things that are happening in the world by actually trying to bring it back to how do we look after ourselves, how do we look after each other, and how do we look after the planet. So they do a fantastic podcast, and I actually Thoughtbox just as a resource and a group to go and talk to. Again, I think they're just brilliant, only because I think you won't get a healthy planet, it goes back to that model, unless you've got healthy people. And you don't get healthy people unless you're looking after yourself and you're looking after your community and you're looking after your team and all those really good things. So I think breaking it down into that. So Thoughtbox Education will be my shout out as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Paul. You've given us so much to think about and lots of great ideas and starting points too. Thank you.
Thank you.